What's going on, guys? This is James Allen. I am recording this on Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025. This morning, I wrote some code that pretty much created some foundational changes in the structure of the app. And I felt really good about it because it feels like the app has a stronger foundation now with these recent changes that I've made to the code base. And when I make a major breakthrough like that, I like to take a pause and stop writing code and just, take a breath of fresh air and, step away from the code for a little bit, right? And since I have some free time, I figure I'd talk to you guys because what better way to spend my time than to talk to you guys, right? You guys are totally worth it. Now, last week, I gave a brief, I would say a brief lecture on what I'm discovering as a Web3 developer to ICP Mafia. Shout out to you, ICP Mafia. He had a space on X and he let me talk there. Very grateful for that. And unfortunately, I was hoping to show the people in the event slides because I wanted to share some examples to make it to make things more concrete. But because it was like a space X event, I couldn't really show any slides. So it is my intention to show some of the visuals I wanted to share on this presentation with you guys and to share my discoveries that I'm making as a Web3 developer because my goal is to help other founders out there. So if you're a Web3 founder, technical or non-technical, this video is for you. I want to share some of the things I'm discovering and hopefully it helps you on your journey. So let's get into the topic. What I'm discovering is this. There's two major changes, two major paradigm shifts that is taking place in a Web3 space that is causing founders, investors, and even protocol builders alike to make all sorts of mistakes or to neglect all sorts of dimensions that shouldn't be neglected. I'll start with the first one because it's more simple, but it's still very much a huge breakthrough. When you talk to Web3 founders right now about dApps, their idea of dApps are typically smart contracts, utility tokens or governance tokens, internet identity, immutable records. Like when you talk to Web3 founders about dApps, their ideas of dApps is not very integrated. It's not integrated at all. It's usually fragmented. They usually are talking about just one component of dApps, whether it be the smart contract, the token, the DAO, the digital identity. But usually when you talk to Web3 founders, it's in fragments. It's not integrated. And I would like to bring a more integrative perspective because I think that integrative perspective will really shift how you think and how you approach dApps as a founder. That is, these dApps are not just about immutable records or smart contracts or internet identity. They're much more than that. If you look at them from a holistic perspective, at the end of the day, what you begin to realize is that dApps are autonomous software. This is a very important point. dApps are autonomous software. These are softwares that are autonomous. What do I mean by that? It means that you don't control them. You don't control them. This is a very dangerous game for a founder, right? Because most founders, technical and non-technical, we tend to see these applications as our brainchild. This is my brainchild, right? Cityscape, I've been working on it for close to 15 years. I've been trying many different methods of seeing how can I create a city portal. And, I've been tinkering at this for a long time, so it takes a long time to really crystallize your idea into something simple that could penetrate into mainstream. And, when you look at, the fact that these applications are now autonomous, as a founder, this is dangerous territory, right? Because this is like a child you don't control anymore. You could put out a product that's X and then you get Y, right? And that was always true to some extent, even in Web 2, right? Even in Web 2, if you put out an application and it starts to get millions of users, the application takes a life of its own and, it becomes bigger than what you imagine, right? But with Web 3, these features are much more exaggerated. This degree of aliveness is much more pronounced because these applications are autonomous. And by autonomous, I mean of the fact that You do not control the data as the founder or as the engineering team. Your users are much more sovereign, right? You have sovereign users now, right? And more importantly, even the application itself is more sovereign, right? Because the application is no longer in the hands of your company. It's in the hands of a DAO, right? And with things like open source and stuff like that, the application could have features could adopt features you didn't even anticipate. If the feature proposal reaches consensus, the application could adopt or develop new features that you, the engineering and founding team, did not anticipate. So it's important that as a founder, you take a step back and stop looking at Web3 applications in fragments and look at them as a whole. These are autonomous software here. That's a huge paradigm shift. These are softwares you don't fully control. They could run away from you, is what I'm saying. And no parent wants a child to run away from them, right? And as a founder, technical or non-technical, you really got to take that into account. And we could have a whole video on this and spend hours on this topic. But for now, all I want you to ask yourself as a founder is, do I even want to go that route of an autonomous software? You don't have to. You could stick to a Web2 application, or you could build a hybrid, meaning some parts you keep Web2 and they stay in your control, and some part you decentralize it. It's autonomous. You might have a Web3 layer and a Web2 layer, right? Or you could go fully autonomous dApp, if that's the route you really want to go. But my point is, as a founder, you really have to start seeing these Web3 applications as autonomous software. And you got to ask yourself the question, is what I'm building in the necessity of being an autonomous software? Is my idea suited to be an autonomous software? It might not be, right? So we could go into hours into this topic, and this topic is much more technical, and it's not the main focus of this video. However, if you want to talk to me more about it, I do offer consulting, especially to startup founders. It's not a lot. It's like $300 an hour. I know this might sound like a lot, but it's well worth it. But let's go into the second area, right? The second paradigm shift that is also happening that I think founders are not noticing is there's a new generation that we have to cater to now, right? I don't know about you, but I'm in my 30s, well into my mid 30s, right? And we're the adults now. Not too long ago, I was like, the consumer, the rookie, right? Now we're the adults, right? We're entering a stage where society, the millennials are the builders, and the consumers that we're building for is Gen Z and Gen A, right? Gen Z and Gen A is becoming the main consumer generation. So are millennials, of course. And there's a fundamental difference between these generations and the previous ones. And as a founder, since you're going to be building software for these people, you really need to take into consideration their sensitivities. And what sensitivity am I speaking of? We often hear of this generation is soft. This generation, I hear that all the time. A lot of people are telling me this generation is soft. A friend of mine not too long ago sent me a video of his house. And this guy, apparently, he seemed a bit spooked by his dog. And he kept saying like, oh, this guy's so soft, man. Look at him. He's so soft, And, first of all, there's nothing wrong with, a gentle guy, right? There's nothing wrong with a person with a man who's gentle. I think that's totally okay. But it's not a matter of like people are soft, right? What's really happening is that people are becoming more emotionally intelligent. Their emotional quotient is rising, right? I mean, if you look at, your parents will think you're soft, right? If you think the Gen Z or Gen A is soft, your parents think you're soft, right? And your grandparents think your parents are soft, right? So it's clear that the human evolution is driving towards an increase in emotional quotient. And because the previous generation was not as emotionally aware, they interpret all this emotional expression as softness. Whether you think it's softness or not truly doesn't matter. What you really have to pay attention to is that this new generation, whether millennial, Gen Z, Gen A, they all have higher emotional quotient. And because they have higher emotional quotient, the software that will speak to them is going to be software that they resonate with emotionally, from an emotional standpoint. So now you have to build software that is not just autonomous, like their own little beings, right? Their own little individual being, and which is one of the reasons why I'm thinking AI and Web3 is so interconnected, because all dApps are really autonomous software, and an autonomous software in a sense is an AI. But now you're building these AIs that are autonomous and governed by the hive, but now you're catering to a hive, a collective body that has a higher EQ, right? So for your app to resonate with them, your app has to show a lot more emotional expression, right? Remember, soul is about reflection, right? Soul is about reflection. If your app does not reflect your consumer will see it as an app with no soul. And if the consumer is all about emotion, they have a higher emotional bandwidth, your app now has to show much more emotional expression. Not only it has to show these emotional expression, it also has to capture it from the user. Because if you don't capture the emotional dimension of the user, right, you won't be able to relate the user properly with other users. And to demonstrate this more vividly, I'd like to provide a code example that I'm working on my application Cityscape. It's a matching algorithm I'm working on. It's not done, but I'm formulating it as I go. And I think this matching algorithm is a good example of how, as a technical founder now, you have to start looking at your users as more complex objects. They cannot be flat two-dimensional objects anymore. They have to be multi-dimensional, and some of that dimension is not necessarily easy to capture. You're going to have to do some thinking, some higher order thinking to properly relate to your users. So let me grab my iPad and go over the code. I'll put the code somewhere in a screen too, so that you guys could follow me. So first, let's look at what's going on with the object. This object is called world affinity, and it's a 4-dimensional vector. The first property, or the first dimension, is contribution, right? How much is the user contributing? Are they adding locations on a Cityscape app? Are they verifying location on a Cityscape app? This is how the user contributes on the ecosystem. So the first dimension it measures is contribution. The second one is loyalty. How loyal they are to the community. Are they engaging in comments? Are they posting comments? Are they messaging users? Like, loyalty is a big dimension as well, right? And you could measure loyalty using different metrics. Then there's another dimension of connection. How much are they connecting with other users, right? And you could track that. Like, are they reaching out to other users? Is other users reaching out to them? Are they messaging each other a lot? So you measure the connection as a particular dimension as well. And the last dimension is resonance. In Cityscape, when you find a location, the location, there's a scavenger hunt component of Cityscape where you have to find a sticker, a QR code sticker. And if you find that sticker and you scan it, it not only gives you a stamp validating that you found that place, it gives you an artifact, which is an NFT. And that artifact is like, it's a culturally important symbol in that world, in that community, right? And, the user could purchase that artifact. And if they purchase that artifact, that shows that it resonated with them. There's something about that artifact, and an artifact is a symbol or relic of a community. There's something about that artifact NFT that resonates with them, that makes them purchase this particular artifact. And we measure that as well. That's a dimension we measure. So you have 4 dimensions in this vector: contribution, loyalty, connection, and resonance. Now, below these 4 properties, you have some basic mathematical properties, right? Like magnitude. And anyone who's familiar with vector mathematics, you take the magnitude of a vector to measure the strength, right? Then below it, you have another utility method where you normalize the vector, right? So normalization of a vector is where you strip away the strength so you could get the direction, right? So it's known as a unit vector, right? Because you reduce the magnitude to 1 so that you could have the direction of the vector. So these magnitude and normalized properties, these are just regular mathematical properties. Don't pay attention to them. They're not important. What's important here, what's the real focus, is the cosine similarity, because that's kind of like one of the key elements of the matching algorithm of Cityscape. And let me explain. So if you look at the cosine similarity function, it takes in as a parameter another user, right? The world affinity of another user, right? So you pass in the world affinity of another user and it compares that user. It takes the cosine of those two vectors, and the cosine is basically how aligned these two vectors are. So let me explain. So first you have the dot product of the two vectors, right? And anyone, again, who's familiar with vector math know you take the dot product when you're trying to see how aligned two vectors are with one another. So you're measuring their alignment through the dot product. Then you have the magnitude product, right? Which is, again, you're capturing the strength, and the ratio. If you look at the end of this function, it returns the ratio of the dot product over the magnitude product. Basically, you're seeing how aligned they are after you strip the strength, right? And that alone is the cosine of these two vectors. And it could return you a number, right? It could return you, if it returns you 0, right? Well, first, let's start with the good case, right? Because you don't want to start with the bad case. If it returns you 1, right? Because remember, the dot product and over the magnitude product is really the cosine of these two vectors. If it returns you 1, that means the angle 0. That means the two users are perfectly aligned with one another, right? If it returns you 1, the cosine of 1 is what? 0. So the angle is 0. So those users are perfectly aligned, regardless of their contribution level, right? Because some users contribute more than another, right? But since we strip away the strength of the vector to the magnitude product, we could see how aligned these two users are with one another by taking the cosine of their two vectors. And if we get 1, they're perfectly aligned. If we get 0, then what do we know? It's orthogonal, right? Because what is the cosine of 0? 90 degrees. So if one user is going one way and another is going at 90 degrees, they're orthogonal from one another. They're not really a match, basically. And if we get a negative number, they're going in the opposite direction. These vectors are going in the opposite direction because the cosine of -1 is what? 180, right? That means one's going one way, the other's going in a negative direction, right? So this is an example of how in code you could capture emotional elements of the user and use interesting vector mathematics and some basic trigonometry to see how aligned they are with other users. And you have to remember, another thing that's really big in this generation is identity, right? It's not just like emotion. It's not just emotional quotient, it's identity. And that's what the world affinity also measures, right? Because we participate in communities that we feel resonate with our identity. So we want to match people that reflect one another, right? Which is, again, why the cosine between these two vectors, I think, is a much more superior way of matching users than rather the silly gimmicks that current dating apps are using, which is simple little properties like likes or pictures. In any case, that's all I have for you in this episode. You know what to do. Don't forget to press that like button and support me on Patreon. I also want to say, if you do want to hire me to consult with you on your Web3 project, I charge $300 an hour. Just reach out with me. My email is in the description. So if you're a technical founder or a non-technical founder and you have a Web3 project that you're working on and you would like to consult with me and get ideas and get feedback on what you're doing, just reach out to me via email. Again, the rate is $300 an hour. Also, if you're an investor and you would like to invest in Cityscape, I do recommend you reaching out as well. Your money is safe with me. I have good character, the intellectual aptitude, and the willpower to make things happen. So don't worry, I have integrity. Your money is safe with me. So reach out. My email is in the description. In any case, my misfits, I will see you next time.